Hello friends and welcome to another video. Uh, in the last video, if you know, we have created a supervisor cluster on vSphere with Tanzu on my vSphere vCenter infrastructure using NSX and vCenter 7.0 update 3. Now in this video, we are going to create a namespace on top of this. Uh, just to give you an overview about namespace, a namespace in Kubernetes construct is used to divide cluster resources. So namespace supports multiple user access and resources are controlled using the resource quotas. And a vSphere administrator can control these quotas and access from the vSphere client. So a namespace sets the resource boundaries where vSphere pods and Kubernetes cluster created by the Kubernetes service can run. Now, let's get on with the creation of this namespace on our vCenter infrastructure. All right, so now here, if you can see under supervisor cluster, I already have a supervisor cluster created with 3 nodes, and this is the IP address, and the version is 1.21. Now, if I go to namespace, you will see that you have already successfully activated the supervisor cluster on this vSphere cluster. Now it's time to create a namespace. Now, under clusters, I'll select the cluster and give namespace a name. So I'll give it a name as namespace -01 and then hit create. Once you will create, you will see that on the vCenter cluster, a namespace one column will be created for you. And under this, you will have your own settings. So if you'll see here, your namespace has been successfully created. You might need to make some changes like which storage policy the main namespace is going to use, the DevOps team users and permissions, the limits to the namespace, and a content library, which the developers are going to use. So just to do the basics for permissions, I'm going to select my domain. You can select your AD domain as well as local vCenter domain as well. I'm going to use vSphere.local. And the user I'm going to select for my test is administrator. The roles you can give is view and edit and an owner. So for now, I'm going to set this as owner. So now you can see the storage. Now I can give the storage policy, which this namespace is going to use. I have a KS policy configured, which I'll select. Once this is done, you can see this option being changed and the policy will be visible in this column. Then for very advanced infrastructures, you can have your capacity and usage configured as well. So if you click edit limits, you can set up your CPU, memory, and storage requirements based on the limitations. I mean, if you want to give certain limitation of the CPU and memory to this namespace, you can give it here. Along with that, you can set up VM classes and add a content library, which was mentioned initially at this location. Now let's go to the SSH and take a look and on the namespace. So I'll try to log in with the kubectl vSphere login command. I'll enter the password. Okay, we are successfully logged in. Now you can do a kubectl config to get the context where you are actually at the moment. So if you'll see here, I can see my context for the namespace and the cluster. So I'm going to select namespace 01 as my context. For that, you can use kubectl config use context, though it is already selected, but in case if it is not, you can use this command, use context namespace 1 to select that namespace as your context. Now, if you do a get pods or get anything, you will be running under this context. So all the details from this namespace will be visible. If I do a describe on this namespace, you can see the details which are there configured at the moment. We have no resource limitations, the labels, the annotations, the status and all those details, the resource quotas and the policy that I have everything is visible here. So this is how you create a namespace on the vCenter infrastructure on the vSphere with Kubernetes. Uh, so in the next video, we are going to create some pods and take this discussion further. But at the moment, thank you very much for watching this video. Have a good day ahead.